Coahulla Creek Football Show, presented by Julian Peeples Funeral Homes. Hello and welcome to the Coahulla Creek Football Show season wrap-up edition. I am Brooks Carter, joined by head football coach Drew Carter. Thank you for tuning in. Last time we talked was the week leading up to the Ringgold game. So excited to kind of put a bow on this year and take a look at some of the all-region players. We just got those out this past week, and always excited to honor some of our players and see some postseason awards and stuff that we'll have for those guys. Still a few to be announced, such as the Daily Citizen All-Area team, and if we're fortunate, maybe we'll see a couple of guys in the Chattanooga Times Free Press Best of Preps team as well, which we've had a couple of guys on each of the last 2 years. But welcome in, Coach. Obviously we didn't have the end of the season that we wanted. We talked about, the last time we talked was going into the Ringgold game here on the Coahulla Creek Football Show. And, this is a team that, as we record here on a Thursday, they're getting set to play in the Sweet 16 against Carver Columbus, which is quite the challenge for them. But they're a second-round playoff team, and that'll kind of be a theme here in this segment as we kind of talk about some of the teams that we played this year as we run through the season. That's a really talented football team we played in our final game of the season.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around that as you're going through the season and your game plan. Because you're just looking at what they do well, where you think you can attack them, in all three phases of the game. A lot of times you don't sit back and think about those things of how good of a football team it is and really how veteran of a football team they were. But now as, we're removed from the season and we look back and start to evaluate ourselves, and you look at these teams and you're like, man, we had, like you said, as we record on a Thursday, we've got 3 teams on that schedule that are still playing football right now in the second round of the playoffs. So, as you said, a theme. We're certainly battle tested this year and played a lot of veteran football teams.
Certainly so. As we run through the schedule here to kind of recap our season here, started off with a couple of non-region games with Northwest Whitfield. That one was kind of an interesting 11 a.m. kickoff. That didn't really happen much on. That kind of felt like a Jefferson Pilot game to make a antiquated reference there. But Saturday morning game after some thunderstorms and stuff rolled through the area. That's a talented football team. Northwest finished 8-3 this year, but tough game to start out with. Then we went over to Chattooga in a game where I really felt like we battled really well with them. We're only down 7-0 at halftime. Just some learning moments, some growing pains in the second half there. We had a chance to go. I think we were down 14-0, had a chance late in the third quarter to go down and make that a 1-score game. And we get a turnover in the end zone, and then they break off a 99-yard touchdown run, which at the time we didn't know this, but Zayden Cook, the guy who broke that run off, had the fifth highest rushing total in state history for a single season, had 2,700 yards rushing. I think I just saw yesterday where he's getting recruited by Michigan State now. So,
at the time, we knew he was a talented player, but had no idea what them as a team, them as an offense were going to be able to do this year. Really, you look back and, we were almost middle of the road for what we gave up with him from a stats perspective. I mean, I think I saw in like week 8 or 9 against Dade County, he was well over 400 yards and like 6 touchdowns against them. So really talented guy, and had no idea at that time of what he was going to be in terms of the whole season. So, yeah, you're exactly right about that.
Yeah, so that rounded up our region play, the trip over to Chattooga. And keep in mind, as we're going through this, our schedule will just flip for next year. We're in the middle of a 2-year home and home deal. This is the first year of our current regional alignment. And we'll get everybody we played this year, we'll get them the exact same week that we got them next season. It'll just be we'll play them at home or away based off what we did this past season. So we'll see all these teams again. And but as we got into region play, we started off with a road trip down to North Cobb Christian, and I think that was a unique experience going down to play in the Atlanta metro area. That's not something that I think the only other time that we've done that as a program was in the state playoffs versus Sandy Creek.
Yeah, it was, which is a challenge in itself. You got a little a different travel going down there, and then the type of program that they are too. From a numbers perspective, as a smaller school being private, you know, they are what they are with that. But they got some guys in that area where they've got a little bigger talent pool.
Oh yeah,
So you see that, you look at the two defensive linemen that they have that are going to be right on that borderline of being a group of five, maybe some low end power four offer type kids, and then they've got the quarterback that'll same age as Waylon, who's probably going to end up being a power four type player. So you got those challenges. You look at that's one of those games you look at the score and probably doesn't reflect what we did. I felt like we played them really tough defensively. We had a tough time getting anything going offensively with those game records at the defensive line that they had. But I was really proud of how we handled all those kind of things because I felt like we fought and competed throughout that game. Just hard to match up with some of the players that they had.
yeah. So after making our two longest road trips of the season to Somerville and then down to Kennesaw, we came back home with a pretty lengthy homestand. We had three straight home games with a bye week built into that, so we didn't play road football for over a month. But we had games against Rockmart, Sonorville, and then LFO. And you know, as an offense, we struggled to get in the end zone the first 3 weeks of the season, but finally broke through in week three with an incredible. Probably, I think it was voted our play of the year on social media as we put that post out last week. Tyler Douglas's one-handed catch in the end zone. Against Sonorville. That was an incredible play. That game, we found ourselves kind of that game was I felt like a lot of these games were indicative of how competitive the games actually were. I didn't really feel like we got blown out a ton this year, considering we had a 1-9 record. But you know, what from the first 3 weeks did you feel like specifically the offense learned to finally break through and start putting points on the board?
Well, I think you could probably throw a lot of things in there. But I think if we boil it down to one thing, we finally started to find an identity of what we are, scheme wise, key players getting the balls in their hands and how to do it, is probably the most simplified form, when you look at that to answer that question. So once we were able to do that, we kind of got our footing a little more. But it was just tough because, you never felt like we had a great amount of confidence because of that. We didn't feel like we had our identity, hadn't had a lot of success early on. So, it's easy for young, inexperienced guys like we had out there on the field for that doubt to creep in. And when that starts happening, you start playing slow and second guessing yourselves. But I think we saw less of that as we started to see a little bit of success and we saw ourselves with an identity.
Yeah, the Sonorville game 4 was the kind of the breakout game offensively for Tyler Douglas, where we kind of saw him shift from maybe playing as so much wide receiver to being more of a running back. He was really kind of a Swiss Army knife offensively this year. But he had probably one of his best games of the season. I think he had over 70 yards rushing, over 80 yards receiving, had obviously the one-handed catch in the end zone, and he was our leading tackler that night against Sonorville. But after that, we welcomed Rockmart in, and if you look comparatively to Rockmart's schedule this year, we played them about as close as any of the teams, kind of middle to lower pack in our region. They came up to our place, and from Rockmart standards, I thought they struggled against us. They did not look on their A game that night, and I thought our guys played really well against a team that's got a chance to make a run towards the state championship.
Yeah, defensively, that was probably one of our strongest performances of the season. I felt like we were sound, we were fitting things, we flew around fast that night. We gave up a couple of chunk plays, which they've got a really talented wide receiver that got behind us a couple of times, made plays there. And then the running back, really talented player who broke a couple of plays on us. But outside of those, I feel like we played them really tough. And I feel like we've used this term and talked about it a lot of times on the show throughout the season of being able to play complementary football. Well, the defense played really good and tough throughout the game, but offensively we weren't able to apply pressure, and flip the field position like we needed to do consistently through that game. And ultimately that lets the game slowly get out of hand when you're talking about a team with that type of talent level.
Moving on past the first half of the season where we played, I think three or four different teams that were ranked in the polls at one point. The top two teams in our region with Rockmart, North Cobb Christian. We transitioned into a part of our schedule where, which actually wound up being better than I thought. We still had three playoff teams in the back half of our schedule too, with
Yeah.
LFO, North Murray, and Ringgold. Um, but we started to put more points on the board. We started to be very competitive in games. Obviously, we know we went to Murray and won in a shutout, which we'll get to here in a second. But LFO, I know that was a game, especially with the first half performance, you were a little disappointed in. But the way that we finished the game, we found ourselves in the game in the fourth quarter, where we were down by 2 scores, had forced a 3-and-out, and drove the ball all the way down into opponent territory with a chance to make it a 1-score game with 8 minutes left. Um, I know as you reflect at season's end, that's a game that you probably felt like maybe you would like to do over.
Yeah, and I think it starts with what you mentioned as you uh, first started introducing this game was the way we started the game. And that was the point in the season where things were really tough. There was a lot of doubt probably going through our players' head. It never really came out in words, or they didn't show it through the way they worked in practice and those sorts of things. But I'm sure internally they were battling their demons. But I think it started to show the most there because of the way we came out in that game. I feel like we weren't ready to play mentally, and you saw that. We had procedural penalties on the offensive side of the ball, offside penalties that were very untimely on the defensive side of the ball. Weren't putting ourselves in the right positions to make plays, and LFO took advantage of it. And jumped out to a lead that we couldn't overcome.
And then after that, we went on the road to Murray County and were able to win, break through and have a big win. And that was really a big deal to get that win, a breakthrough win. And the thing that I think was the most impressive about that, which I remember talking about in the show coming off of that week, was it wasn't a win that we just squeaked out. We came out and dominated from start to finish against Murray County, winning 36-0.
Yeah, that kind of put everything together and allowed our guys to believe in what we're doing, what they're doing. So really huge in that. And I think we talked about it that week on the show. It was huge because I think a lot of those guys were able to see these are the things that can happen when we do what we're coached to do, and allow ourselves to play fast and play physical. So really big deal. And another part of that, talking about it from a whole program and a community aspect. At that point in the season, a lot of struggle. We hadn't seen a lot of success in terms of wins and what had been going on the scoreboard. I think we were going into fall break that week, and our community support and our crowd support that week was just the same as it had been all season. So huge tip of the cap there. I think that exemplifies what we're doing as a program and what our community and school expects out of us and how much they believe in us and how big a factor we are in those things.
Yeah, it's nice to see the support and the loyalty still be there. After an 0-6 start, I was sitting over on the home sideline calling the game up in the press box, so my vantage point was out to the away sideline, and we had a pretty good crowd there for a road game, considering how we had started the season. And that was a big moment, a big reward for our guys who had battled through the schedule to that point. And that night, Tyler Douglas had 125 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns, which tied a school record for most in a single game with Tyler Douglas and Peyton Gordon. Andrew Russell looked what we knew he could look like for the first time all season, had 2 receiving touchdowns in that game. And, the defense played lights out all night. The biggest thing I remember from that game was the special teams. The special teams was really what made the difference in that game. We forced 2 turnovers on special teams. Um, Essentially, it worked out as almost like a blocked punt. We forced a turnover on downs on a kind of a bobbled snap. Colby Ebert applied some really good pressure, which forced the punter to try to take off and run. And then we made a field goal for the first time all season that night too, with Brett Paws knocking one through. An underrated for I know that as a coach that special teams can play such a significant role in a game, but that was truly a game where we won in all 3 phases.
Yeah, to use the phrase that we talked about just a minute ago, being able to play complementary football. We didn't turn it over on offense, so we weren't putting our defense in short yardage, short field situations. And then the flip side of that, our special teams and our defense was able to make game breaking, game changing plays with turnovers on downs, turnovers on the special teams, and flip the field upside down and give us some short fields and then able to cash in on those.
And Andrew Russell blocked a punt that night, which I had just remembered now as well. But so we went into senior night against Union County, big physical football team that had those big mountain boys up front, and that was a game that we still the final score was 35-20. Was one of our higher offensive outputs of the season. They had a couple of really good players. I can't remember what his name was. Number 2 was kind of the game breaker for them. They would put him in a wildcat formation, had the big long touchdown on a slant. I'll be honest, did not expect him to be as fast as he was. That's one of those deals where you're watching a team and you're like, I did not expect somebody from up in the rural mountains to have a kid that fast.
Yeah, he's deceptive too. He's kind of a strider and a smooth runner, so it doesn't appear that way until he's pulling away from guys. But I mean, he's a first team all region receiver for a reason, and we got to see that firsthand. And then you mentioned the running back. I mean, he's a big physical kid. Kind of reminds you of our Tyler Locklear a few years ago. Big, strong kid that's hard to bring down and got enough speed to pull away from you.
The one thing I remember specifically about that game, I thought it was one of Waylon's better throws of the season. It was our call of the game from that game where he connected with Andrew Russell right before halftime. He threw a crossing pattern over the middle into the end zone, big high arching spiral, dropped it right in a bucket as he got drilled, letting go of the football. And those are the throws where you're looking back on film at the end of the year, looking ahead to next season, where it's like, okay, this is the potential. Like this, like you highlight that play and like this is what he can do. And I'm excited to see more of that from him.
Yeah, I think that stretch of the season right there, game 6, 7, going forward from there is when you started to see that start to click. A lot of that's having Andrew Russell back, a guy that's a playmaker. Finding our identity, and then just the game reps for Waylon. He's starting to see himself having some success, and then that started to stack on top of each other. But you're right, that last third of the season, I would say, you can pick about 3 to 4, 5 throws every single game. You're like, that right there is the potential. We've got a player.
Yeah, certainly. So Andrew Russell, speaking of him, had 6 catches for over 100 yards that night and 2 more touchdowns. So he had 2 touchdown receptions in consecutive weeks, having not played at all, basically all season due to injury. In 2 weeks, he found himself in the top 5 in touchdown receptions for the region after 2 games, which is pretty impressive. That's a quick way to climb up the leaderboard and stats in the region when you can put together 2 weeks like that. But finished out on the road with games at North Murray and Ringgold. North Murray one was really exciting. It was on TV. We jumped out on them early. Game was competitive throughout. I would say most of the probably first 2.5, 3 quarters. Really, the game, like I would say the play that really kind of put the nail in the coffin was when we were driving in for a potential touchdown, and probably should have been defensive holding, but the kid from North Murray winds up making an interception in the end zone on what otherwise probably would have been a touchdown because Andrew had him beat. And but that was a game where we had struggled to start fast all season, and we came out and popped them with a 72-yard touchdown, followed up with a 2-point conversion, and that was another one of those games where we're like, it shows where we can do some of these things that we've been trying to do all year.
Yeah, the starting fast was the first time we'd been able to do that all year, and you saw it energize our whole team. Our defense flew around. I really thought that, we didn't have a lot of stops that game, but we made them earn everything that they had. I felt like that night, especially early on. We made them put together drives and forced them to have to convert third downs. So nothing was easy early on, especially in that game. And you're right. I think if the play that you were talking about where we had the interception in the end zone, if we're able to convert there, I think that would have made it either an 8 or 10-point game, I think, at that point in the game. So, you make that play, who knows what may happen going forward.
Certainly so. And, going into the last game, I'll just kind of say it this way. We ran into a buzzsaw our last game of the season against Ringgold. I know we kind of talked about it at the beginning of the show here, but that was a team that knew what was in front of them, trying to secure a home playoff game. And, not that we didn't have a lot to play for by any means, but that team was sharp. They were crisp. They came out. One of the things and played just really well. That formation that they ran for their first touchdown, that looked like an old Steve Spurrier formation to me, like some sort of like only 3 linemen down in front of you. That was a kind of a weird formation. I don't know. I had even asked you, was that a look you'd even seen on film?
No, we hadn't. And that's the type of thing right there where if you've got a guy out there that's played as much football as a Keith Collins from the season before, he probably gets us lined up there. But when you got linebackers and secondary guys that are still trying to figure out base stuff, those are the kind of things that other teams can take advantage of.
Yeah, so one thing I really did like about that night, I think we forced 3 turnovers. Chris Ewert had an interception in that game, and so that was kind of the bright spot from that game. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we will get into our all-region players of the year and take a look at some stats from the season. So stick around. This is the Coahulla Creek Football Show here on the presented by Julian Peeples Funeral Home.
Whether you're looking for a taste of classic seasonal sweetness or need to satisfy your candy cravings, DQ has something for every fan this season. So hurry into DQ on Cleveland Highway today and see what else is in store for fans all season long.
Introducing BioLite, the world's first IV in a bottle. BioLite is a medical-strength hydration solution physician formulated to help relieve the discomforts of dehydration, like upset stomach and fatigue. If you want powerful hydration relief, try it today.
Junior's Building Materials, the Tri-State's headquarters with building products for builders, contractors, remodeling projects, and do-it-yourselfers. Junior's is the largest dealer stocking Trex Decking, the world's #1 composite decking brand. Trex isn't just boards and balusters, but a new way to live outdoor and virtually maintenance-free. For all your building or remodeling needs, shop Junior's Building Materials.
Junior's Building Materials, we always come through for you.
Whalen throws it, and it's caught. Touchdown, Colts! You know what, boys? We just got in the end zone. Tyler Douglas on the touchdown. A diving catch in the end zone.
Welcome back to the Coahulla Creek Football Show presented by Julian Peeples Funeral Home. Let's get into the all-region players that we had from this year, starting out with our first-team guys. Isaac McGill was first-team all-region at center, and I was texting with his dad yesterday, and I was telling him how big of a deal that is, considering how tough this region was and how many talented players. For him to be voted the best center in a region that had 9 teams and 6 playoff teams in it, that's a big deal.
Yeah, 100%, and 100% earned on his part. I think you can talk to anybody in our program. You can talk to Isaac himself. He doesn't get these accolades and this recognition because of his raw ability or his talent. He gets these things because of his commitment, his character, and his leadership qualities. We were the coaches, we were going through all that stuff in the meeting, and I threw his name out there because I thought that he was worthy of at least a second team. But as we kind of worked through those things, and I kind of started describing him, he's a second-year starter, he's a team captain, probably plays harder than anybody on the field. That was it, and he was sold at that point because all those guys remember seeing him on film and seeing the type of player that he is. A huge deal, huge congratulations, huge amount of appreciation for him, and a huge hole to fill.
Certainly so. He's one of those seniors that one of the 6 seniors that will be graduating this year. Our other first team guy, no surprise here, in my opinion, Jackson Lowry had an incredible season, a school record breaking season, with 12 and a half tackles for loss. He was a game wrecker all year, and, opposing offenses, you could tell game planned around him.
Absolutely. The proof's right there. When you're looking at a 3-4 defensive end with that type of production, that can flip any series at any moment in any game, it wasn't a hard sell for Jackson. The coaches saw it. They had the game plan against it, like you said, and he was a constant nuisance to other offenses all throughout the season.
Moving on to some second team selections, we'll keep on that defensive front. Another guy who was a game wrecker this year, as well as kind of an Iron Man, Chevy Joyce, playing starting at left tackle and at defensive end, and basically never coming off the field doing so. He was awarded with a second team defensive line.
Yeah, that would probably be a better award for Chevy as an Iron Man, because down the stretch, some of our depth started to struggle on the defensive line, and he never came off the field. The only way we could get him a blow is to get the special teams on the field. He'd get a shot of water and get some coaching from offensive or defensive side of the ball in passing pretty much. But, yeah, unbelievable. Chevy's the perfect combination of a really talented guy and great work ethic. He's a program guy and does everything we ask him to do, and the proof is there. He's a junior and he's a second-time captain. So what can you not say about him?
Certainly so. Excited to have him back. 3-year starter on the offensive line, 2-year starter on the defensive line. Having those 2 guys, Jackson and Chevy, anchoring the defensive line, and then we'll have Colby Ewert back at nose tackle. Really excited to see what those guys can do next year as seniors. But looking at our other second-team selections, we had Chris Ewert, outside linebacker, who, if you look at our stat page on our website, he filled up. He's the only player on our team, and I would probably say one of the only players in the region that had at least a number in every single stat category. He had forced fumbles, he had fumble recoveries, he had interceptions, he had pass breakups, he had sacks, he had tackles for loss. This guy did a little bit of everything this year.
Yeah, and so when you say all those things, that perfectly embodies what an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense has to do. Like, that's one of the most difficult positions to play, in my opinion, on the defensive side of the ball, because one play you may have to be out covering a number 2 receiver and defending screens or dropping into pass coverage. And the next play or the next week, you may have to be down there playing like an old school 5-man front defensive end on the tight end. So a lot goes into that mentally. A lot goes into that in the physical skill set. And he does all those things. And it was kind of disappointing this year for Chris. We thought we were going to use him a little more on the offensive side of the ball too. But as the season progressed, his defensive production was so good, and the way that he was playing and the way that he was progressing, as I said, you kind of just left that as is and then allow him to help us out on every special teams too. So that he was a huge beneficiary of that, of being able to focus solely on that, and the proof's in the numbers.
Tyler Douglas, the other second-team selection, he was selected defensively, and from a defensive standpoint, I know he got a lot of attention for his offensive production this year. Led the team in tackles this year. He was second in the team in tackles last year. Already, as just a sophomore, he's racked up over 100 career tackles in 2 years. He is quietly putting together one of the best defensive resumes, projecting this out over 4 years. He has the potential to have some legendary defensive numbers here by the end of his time at the Creek.
Yeah, he does. When you look at Tyler, it's one of those type deals where you expect success out of him. So the floor is really high when you're evaluating him. Just because of everything that he does and everything that he does so well. So I don't know how you even classify him. I could have made a hard push, I feel like, for him to be an athlete type player. It's football. That's how you label Tyler Douglas, is football player.
And then moving on to honorable mention, we've got a couple of guys that made that. Kobe King in his second year as a defensive starter, cornerback, and then also he made it as a defensive player, but he also had a really good year at receiver, led the team in receptions. One thing I wanted Kobe to break through and get that get a touchdown catch this year. That did not come. Hopefully that'll happen during his senior year next year. But really big year from him defensively. And one of the things that I noticed about him was his stats didn't awe you, but he was one of those guys that you could trust from a corner position to kind of be that guy out on an island in coverage.
Yeah, and I think that point right there is the reason why his stats weren't there. He simply didn't get targeted a lot. When you turn on the film, if you're an opposing offensive coach and you see the way he blows up screen passes, and had an interception, I think, early in the season on the scrimmage game or something like that, and broke up a couple of other ones as the season went on. People didn't want to test him with that. And then, how comfortable he is staying in phase or getting back into phase as the ball's down the field. Just the reliability there. People decided to go other directions with that. And I thought he was deserving of that recognition.
Other honorable mention guy was Andrew Russell, which is kind of a little bittersweet. With him, we really only had him healthy for 4 or 5 games this year, and and he missed the last half. He kind of, I think, his quote almost broke my heart in our last game wrap up article that Ava Howell did for us. His quote was, "Ended like it started for me, hurt," and which is just kind of an unfortunate way that his senior season went. But he did enough for people noticed. That 3 or 4 week stretch, he made a huge impact in those games, and it wasn't just the stats, because after that 2 week period where he had 4 touchdown catches, the 2 weeks after that, opponents were very aware of where he was at all times.
Oh yeah, it opened up other things for us after he kind of got people's attention, like you said. So which we luckily had some things in our pocket of different ways to get him the ball, because like you're talking about, I mean, he's got a skill set that he's got to touch the football, and that was so such a disadvantage for us going through the season, especially the early part where we didn't have him. I mean, we had these plans of him to be a big part of the offense and be one of our explosive players. And you're only able to see that in a tiny amount of time during the season. So, like I said, it breaks your heart for him. It breaks your heart for our team of not having a guy like that out there to be able to lean on and make plays. But certainly, when you look at the small amount of time he was out there, the impact that he played, he's certainly deserving of this honorable mention.
When we come back, we will wrap up the show by kind of looking at our program from a 10,000-foot view. And Coach Carter's got some thoughts on a question that I've kind of posed to him over the last couple of weeks. And then also we'll take a look at kind of what's next for our program as we transition into off season, some events on the calendar and some of our quarterback club fundraisers and all that kind of stuff that we'll touch on as well. Stick around. This is the Coahulla Creek Football Show presented by Julian Peeples Funeral Home.
Your roof is the most critical part of your home, especially in the heat of the summer. That's why OC Roofing Systems is offering free roof inspections all summer long. Families in Ellijay have trusted OC Roofing Systems time and time again for our award-winning service and countless 5-star reviews. Protect your roof this summer. Visit ocroofingsystems.com today and schedule your free roof inspection.
Nature never repeats itself, and neither does Mohawk's Techwood hardwood flooring. Techwood is unique and one of a kind. Your floor should be long-lasting and beautiful, like the relationships you create at home. Choose Techwood for a stunning, natural hardwood floor for everyday performance. More moments are made on Mohawk.
Welcome back to the Coahulla Creek Football Show presented by Julian Peeples Funeral Home. Coach, one of the things I thought was it was kind of something I was just thinking about, and I thought it would be a really kind of interesting thing to include here in our season wrap-up show. You look at some of the other programs around our area, some of them in our region. Some of them have just certainly they've been opponents in our area for several years now, or they're just in our area and we can see their program and see some of the successes that they're having. But, with some of the work that I've done outside of our program, working with Northwest Georgia football, I've kind of I posted a graphic at season's end when all the playoff positions had been clinched, and you start seeing all these programs who have put together 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decade plus consecutive playoff appearances. And some of those teams on there might surprise you. You probably think, Cartersville. Okay, yeah, they're on there. Prior to missing the playoffs last year, Calhoun had missed the playoffs since 1999. That doesn't surprise you. Those type of programs were on there. But then, North Murray's on there. 9 years in a row, they've made the playoffs. Christian Heritage is on there. They haven't missed the playoffs. I think that this is their 6th consecutive year. I bring those two up because those are programs. North Murray opened just a few years before Coahulla Creek did, and Christian Heritage didn't start playing football at the GHSA level until I think 2011 or 2012, around the same time we did. What do you think it takes to, I guess, let me ask it this way. What do you think it takes to not have what we quote unquote down years, like in a down year where you're still competing for a playoff spot?
Yeah, there's a lot of ingredients that go into that. When I first took the job, that's kind of the long-term mission, the long-term goal of consistent success, what we're talking about right now. And I think that's what that is relative to our area of the state, the type of players that we're going to get in a normal year is consistent success. There's a ton of things that go into that, like I said, and the things that we do well that are already in place, I think our coaching staff's excellent. I think the kids that we have in our program have great buy-in and great work ethic. We have great community support. You mentioned the quarterback club of the way that they're able to support our program. Our administration understands the level of commitment that it requires from all those things. They understand the importance of what we do for the school and kind of setting the tone and the thermostat for the whole school year. So they get all those things, and all those things are in place for us to succeed. Making sure all our kids are in weight training classes so that they're physically prepared. So all those things are in place. We're at that point now where it kind of boils down to a numbers game for us. We've talked so many times about our 6 seniors. Those guys have gone through it. They've been committed this year. But when we look at our schedule, there's nobody else that had 6 seniors on their team. So we've got to get to that point where what we're bringing from the middle school is that 15 to 22 guys every single year. And then as we do that and we stack those classes year to year, now we don't have a bunch of years where we've got a bunch of 10th graders having to play varsity football. They're plugging and playing a little bit at a time. They're helping us on special teams because those guys need to be playing those 5, 6, 7 JV games and developing their skills. And we're not having to rely on until they're 17 years old as opposed to 15 or 16 years old. There's a lot of pieces to that. Me and the staff have really brainstormed that. How do we bridge that gap of getting all those 8th graders to us? Well, we've got some ideas that we're going to try throughout this offseason through spring and into next year to hopefully with that. Josh King, our head middle school coach, is totally committed to that. Like he gets that his number one job and goal with his job title is to get those guys as best prepared to come to us. Middle school championships are great if that comes with that, but he wants those guys prepared to come and be great high school football players for Coahulla Creek. So we're gonna venture through that and see what best way we can do that. And I think that once we get that, then it starts to get even younger than that of what can we do with our 5th and 6th graders and our 4th graders, getting them into a program. I think Cartersville, Calhoun, and even Pickens County are some of the ones that I've looked out and reached out and seen what they're doing with some of their youth league type kids of putting in a feeder program that is highly competitive, highly organized, and is directly run with our high school football program and our quarterback club, kind of making decisions and supporting those things from those angles. So again, it's a lot of things going into it, but I think that next step for us is that numbers game of being able to get to that point where we're in that 70 to 85 kids in our program as opposed to 50 to 60 kids, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. And I think, the numbers game is certainly something to, it's hard to not have some depths and stuff when you have years where you only have 6 seniors. I think we've got a couple of really good classes. Our juniors, we got, I don't know exactly what the number is, but I know that's probably in the teens of juniors that we've got. Same thing with our sophomore class, maybe even a little more from those guys. It may be closer to 20. But part of that too is guys staying out. We talk about, and working in my industry in news, we talk a lot about, like, for instance, police numbers are down with certain places. It's not just about recruitment, it's about retention too. So, getting the players in the program and then keeping them there too. And I think everything that we do, even with what I do, I think it generates interest in the program. And that's ultimately what I like. I get some self-reward out of this, but my favorite part about it is if it generates interest from people who may be wanting to play the sport, and then also the type of coverage it provides for our kids as well. So,
yeah, I think there's two parts there. What you're talking about, the interest that we're able to do there, and then as coaches, our job is to, when we get them in the program, we've got to establish those relationships with them for that retention. Because if they've got a head coach or the coordinator or their position coach, all those angles, there's got to be great relationships with that to be able to have that type of retention. So, we spend a lot of time and energy doing the best we can with that, because we are fighting an uphill battle with what our society is today, of being that microwave society of instant gratification and find the easiest path. Well, we all know football is not an easy path. You practice a whole lot more than you play, and the practice and the weight training and the off-season demands and requirements are high, and they're great, and a lot of people don't want to do that.
Certainly rewarding, though, when you look back on it. I know you can look back on your playing career and see how rewarding it was. Likewise with me. I didn't play at the college level, but I still think very fondly of the guys I played with, the coaches I played for, even at the high school level. So, I know that's harder to sell as a 31-year-old to a 16-year-old, but if you could make them see it at 31, then they would understand. Lastly, to wrap up our season wrap show here, Coach, let's kind of look ahead at what's next. I know we've got our banquet coming up soon. At some point in the next few weeks, we've got our some fundraisers and stuff that we're got a couple of ones that we're going to be doing again. I know the reverse raffle was very successful last year, and we're going to look to do that again. And then some of our usual suspects that we do over the off season that a lot of people have seen or been involved in the past too.
Yeah, banquet set for Sunday, January the 12th. That'll be at 2:00 in the gym. So we've got that set and ready to go. One last time to get all those guys together for the 2024 version of the Colts. Celebrate those guys that have been all region, seniors, captains, all those sorts of awards. And then, like you said, coming out of that, we will get our $10,000 reverse raffle rolling. We don't have the exact date set for that, but we started that shortly after the banquet ticket sales, that is. And then the drawing will be sometime in March. We try to do that right before we let out for spring break. And we'll have that at one of the local restaurants again, looking to get that confirmed in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and if you have a kid, or if you watch this show, your kid's probably on the football team, or you're just a really huge supporter of our program, which we thank you for that. If you watch this show and you're not involved in our quarterback club, there are multiple ways that you can get involved. Probably the easiest way is to go to our quarterback club tab on our website. There's contact info for who to get in contact with to join. Once you do that, there's even a place on our website to pay for your membership on there. So, I know there's probably some parents that aren't involved in the quarterback club. That's the best and easiest way to get involved and support our kids, support our program, and support the player who comes home to your house every night. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage that. Our board members of the quarterback club would say that exact same thing. And 100% of what is raised and in that quarterback club goes to support our players first, and then our coaches to put the best product on the field that we can. Put this in the best equipment we can get, and provides the coaches with equipment to do the drills in the best way we can. And then other things are the technology needs that we need with the way that the game's evolving. So a ton of different things that they support us to do. And we're very thankful, and we're very spoiled because of how supportive our quarterback club is.
Certainly. So, so this will be it for from a kind of a media standpoint, wrapping up the 2024 season, as this will be the final installment of the Coahulla Creek Football Show for 2024. Coach Carter and I will you'll see us periodically, not in the more formalized YouTube version of this show, but we'll be doing some of our Creek casts like we started doing in the off season last year. I'll have Coach Carter on, obviously, and then some other guests and stuff. Maybe have AD Chris Woods back on, maybe some other coaches, players. We'll figure that out. But if you like our content, you know where to find it by now. It's all over social media. It's on our website. So for one final time, signing off on the Coahulla Creek Football Show in 2024. I'm Brooks Carter for Coach Drew Carter. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you here for the 2025 next football season. Thanks for tuning in, guys.